What up, yo? Alright, so I'm back with some new videos. I'm trying to make several tonight so that I can stagger them out over the next few days because the last few days have been fairly hectic. Long day job hours and sleep issues, which I'm addressing with some medication changes, which enabled me to go to work 2 very long days, but unfortunately, by the time I got to today, I completely crashed. So now I'm awake, and as a nocturnal person, I'm a lot closer to the time when I'm the most alert, awake, on. So I'm sitting here, and I am watching one of the 2 movies I'm going to discuss today. So this is my 75th episode of BLU Review. So, happy birthday to me. Happy anniversary, rather. And I'm going to plunge ahead with 2 films that are kind of my absolute favorites of a certain subgenre, that a very notorious subgenre that is no longer in existence. Really, 1 or 2 things come out occasionally in this vein, but they're definitely not done like some of these films were. These films are very different, though. But I thought the 75th episode should have a special occasion. These are both films I've reviewed before on here last Halloween. So forgive me for being redundant. These are both Blu-rays, so this is really a BLU review. And I guess you could say I'm redoing them because I get excited by each of them whenever I watch them, and every year when I watch them for this season. One of them I get excited about because it's very transgressive, it's very notorious, it's very grotesque. It pushes the limits, pushes my limits really, really far. But it's done with a certain intellectual rigor behind it, which a lot of people dismiss. Some people say that's overhyped and pretentious, or accidental even on the part of the filmmaker. But I believe that despite any truly horrible, disturbing elements of the way the film was shot and or of the story itself, that's a clever and powerful film. It's a memorable film, and it launched the found footage subgenre of horror. So I'm talking about Cannibal Holocaust, and I'm watching it right now. Beautiful Grindhouse releasing Blu-ray release. And this one I really just kind of had to upgrade to Blu-ray. It was just one I knew I was going to watch periodically, and I wanted it to look and sound the best it could. I had the Grindhouse DVD release when it came out, the limited edition. I did sell it to my friend Rachel Danielle Levine, a very talented, extremely talented artist that I met on Facebook. I applaud her taste in film. So let's open this thing up and look at it a little, and then I'm going to talk about the movie. I may have done all this last year, but I think this is going to be better recorded, better spoken, better put together than the previous segment. One can hope, anyway. So this is a brand new art piece commissioned for this Blu-ray, and then of course it's got all the extra stuff. It's a reversible cover, so you can also look at it with this cover, which she's naked. That's the difference. So they had to try to be controversial even in the re-release. And then we've got an awesome booklet with all kinds of original movie posters for the film. Faye is getting really the short end of the stick, or maybe the long end of the sticks, in all of these pictures. She's one of the main characters. It also has the Cannibal Holocaust soundtrack album, which is one of my very favorite soundtracks of all time. In my top 5, I'd have to say, of all film soundtracks. So, films, the Blu-ray has a ton of extras. We may get into all that, but I'm really going to talk about the movie itself. Tim Lucas called this film I think he says one of the most frightening films he'd ever seen. Uh, and so I think it deserves to be watched every Halloween because it evokes dread and terror, and it does it in very interesting ways. So a lot of you guys have probably seen this movie. You're probably well familiar with it or well familiar with the premise, or at the very least, you've seen a lot of it, movies influenced by its format, its structure, which is basically a film within a film. Um, so you have the kind of wraparound, realistic footage, which is really, cinematic and beautifully shot. And then you have the found footage, which the outside story interrupts once in a while. But the found footage is shot in a verite style, which looks more real. Um, and then there also is a little other piece of footage that is real death footage, and it's claimed by one of the characters to be faked. So I learned all of this, all these details behind this movie a little after I'd seen it for the first time. It's an incredible book called Meat is Murder, and it's also covered in an incredible book called Killing for Culture. And these are by Karekes and Slater. Well, that did one of them is by Makita Brockman, one is by Karekes and Slater. They were all published by Creation Books, which I believe is defunct now. I still have my first edition somewhere, and I really should try to upgrade them because they're beat up. I've read them so much. Really informative stuff, fascinating stuff to me about real death in films, snuff films, Mondo films, rumors of snuff films, and a real breakdown in those books of what is real and what isn't, and how it was done, and also kind of the meanings behind it. There's a deep analysis of these movies, in addition to all the facts. So with Cannibal Holocaust, you've got a genre where, started in the early 70s, the first it's kind of an offshoot of the Mondo genre. It started in the early 60s by Franco Prosperi and Gualtiero Jacopetti. I may be saying his first name wrong, I'm probably butchering it. Jacopetti and Prospero went on to do several movies in this vein. They did Mondo Cane 2, or Mondo Pazzo, Women of the World, Africa Adios, or Africa Blood and Guts. Those are the primary non-fiction ones they did. And they basically filmed strange rituals, bizarre customs, and various atrocities from around the world, and they were supposedly all real. I think the vast, vast majority of them are real. There's rumors that they set up certain shots or situations, especially in Africa Adios, but they were already coming into a situation where the African continent was torn apart and desecrated by colonialism, British imperialism. So it wasn't hard to get in on the ground floor of executions and other horrible things. But it wouldn't have surprised me if at some point Jacopetti didn't say, okay, hold on, don't shoot him yet. I got to get the camera. And that is lampooned in Cannibal Holocaust. Cannibal Holocaust is obviously a parody of the Mondo films. The Mondo films spawned a lot of imitations, a lot more in that vein. Eventually, it mutated into kind of the real death films of the 80s onward, like Faces of Death. That kind of took the Mondo film into new territory. More gross, more morbid than ever. However, quite a lot of those films do have a good bit of faked footage. So I had the displeasure of seeing Faces of Death 4, I believe, at a midnight movie theater in 1993. And I mean, it was funny, but I know it was intending to be. Some of the scenes that seemed to be pretty real were really disgusting. And then the fabricated scenes are just kind of goofy. Even though they're depicting grotesque things, the effects were okay. But I think Cannibal Holocaust has that whole Faces of Death series beat easily. It's a fictional story, but like I said, it's a movie within a movie. Basically, the cannibal genre started in Italy as a result of the Mondo film success. So they started telling fictional stories that incorporated these real settings and real and fictional extreme customs, and it's supposed like barbarism of savages in the New Guinea and the Amazon and Africa and various places. So the first one, really proper, was Man from Deep River by Umberto Lenzi, with Ivan Rasimov and Mimi Lai, and that one I have on Blu-ray too. That one is a solid movie. I think it's very well done. I think it's a cool story. It does have some animal violence, which began that trend, unfortunately, but that became a mainstay part of the movies. All the human, violence is faked, is special effects, but the animal violence, unfortunately, was real, and that was, I think, artistic, aesthetic, definitely aesthetic, but not a moral decision to drive home that anything could happen in this movie, and that trend continued into the later cannibal movies. After Umberto Lenzi, he came full circle and did a couple in the 80s, but Deodato did probably the next most infamous one, Last Cannibal World, which I also have on DVD, also known as Last Survivor or Jungle Holocaust, which I think is a very well-made movie, and it is kind of frightening. Definitely a horror film, but it's also like a survivalist film, like Alive or those kind of films, like the people who got stranded in the mountains of snow and resorted to cannibalism. It's definitely a survivalist film. It only has two characters, really, one played by Massimo Foxy and one played by Ivan Rasimov, yet again. And I just think it's a really well done film, and it does have some grotesque animal violence, and the cannibalism gore is upped quite a bit also. And like I said, that's fake. So let's flash forward a couple of years, and Deodato is going to do a follow-up, and this one's Cannibal Holocaust. And basically, it takes the conceit that you have a professor, Harold Monroe, which is played by Robert Kerman, aka Arbola, who was a porn actor for many years, but did some legit films too, and a few Italian horror films. Robert Kerman stars as Harold Monroe. He's like I said, he's a university professor, and he goes in this jaunt through the jungle with this guy named Chaco, and then this other kid, and they the three of them kind of make their way through the jungle, and they're essentially looking for evidence of what happened to this expedition by these filmmakers earlier. And there were four filmmakers, and they're all pretty sleazy, reprehensible people. And besides that fact, I'll push this up a little bit. Besides that fact, they're definitely patterned after the excesses and alleged excesses of Jacob Petty and Prosperi. And they kind of started, this movie didn't just start the found footage subgenre, but it also began this whole wave of films revolving around filmmakers who are like guerrilla filmmakers and will do anything to get the shot. And that's, and anything to shock and excite people. And that basic idea has filtered through many, many movies, and even movies that don't follow the exact found footage model use that same concept. Network isn't a good example. When they finally got down to the death show, it's like, how far can we push this envelope? They were going to do basically snuff films on TV, and they already enlisted a Black Panther-like organization, and they were going to film their guerrilla activities. And then, of course, Videodrome, which, they get supposedly a transmission from Asia. They're snuff films, and the main character goes to investigate all this. Recently, there was a movie called Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, and he, in the modern day, he's like got a camcorder or video camera, but he also like will happen upon things like robberies and murders. And sometimes he won't set them up, but I mean he'll wait for that most advantageous time to start filming and get all the footage. And of course, again, it's a guy who will do anything for the shot. And that idea, in Cannibal Holocaust is embodied by Alan, the leader of this group of filmmakers. And he's like, we got to get the footage back to America. Keep filming. And that's in a lot of found footage movies. One of my favorite found footage franchises from recent years, maybe the only franchise I can think of like this, is Rec, the Spanish films. And man, they're incredible. The first one is really incredible. The second one's great. And then it kind of hits the law of diminishing returns. But yeah, the first Rec is really very well done, as everything you see filmed is being filmed by the characters, with their camera. There's nothing outside of that, or like an objective reality outside of that with the characters. It's all basically as if you found the film footage yourself. So Cannibal Holocaust, like I said, does have more of the wraparound story, and that's the three guys in the jungle do find the corpses, or really skeletons, of the crew, the film crew. And they also find the film cans, a film they shot. And this has all been mounted ritualistically in this giant kind of mosaic ritual kind of altar. What would you call it? What is the word? Shrine, by the one of these tribes they encounter, the cannibalistic one. And they Monroe manages to kind of scare them, and I don't want to say communicate with them, but he basically bedevils them into thinking he's like a god, or with his technology, and then he they take the footage. They're careful first. They have to sit in on a cannibal eating ritual, which is not too great. Yeah, I'm watching this now, and it's already getting to the really some of the bad kind of animal violence. The first instance of the animal violence, and oh god, it's pretty bad. It's funny, as the years have gone by, when I watch this, it actually, those scenes make me wince more and more rather than less, and I guess that's because I've grown more and more in tune with my love of animals and animal rights, animal liberation issues, and stuff like that. However, I know some people like that who, one friend in particular was really angry at me for purchasing this film years ago for the first time on VHS because of the animal violence, and he was against it, and he thinks it shouldn't have been made. It's gross, it's not worth it for the art. At the time, my argument was maybe it is to some artists who've used like animals and animal carcasses and killed animals for rituals, and some of the stuff is ritualistic, and things like the actionism films of Otto Mule and Kurt Kren, and a lot of the early performance art, like the Panic movement that had Jodorowsky and Arabal, and then of course another actionist called Herman Nitsch, who was real crazy and did a lot of these kind of Dionysian rituals. Naked people would sit inside hollowed out carcasses of cows, and so that stuff kind of was, at that time I was pushing my envelope of what I could take as far as extreme imagery. So I definitely still have a taste for that, but I definitely would prefer it remain fictional and simulated. My argument, my ultimate counter argument to my friend who was really on me about this movie, is that he was, I was a vegetarian. I still am a vegetarian, and he was a rabid meat eater. And I just said, hey, you're supporting an existing industry and its barbarism by buying and consuming dead animals, whereas I'm consuming a film that was made, years and years ago, and it's over and it's done, and there is no more. It's a document. I'm not supporting it morally. But this guy, I told him, you actually are financially supporting an industry that's at least as barbaric as anything you'll see in these cannibal movies. Um, he said, maybe I'm a hypocrite. I said, well, maybe so. Yeah. Um, but so here's the deal. Uh, so they get through all these little rites of passage, and Professor Moreau gets back to America, and there's like a fictitious broadcasting company, kind of reminiscent of the one in Network, and some of that same mercenary attitude that Faye Dunaway's character has in Network, for which she won an Oscar for good reason. And it's in a skyscraper. It's in New York. You know, Manhattan looks great back then, and you know, all these filmmakers are from New York, or the families live in New York. None of their families are particularly well off. They interviewed them in the beginning, and all of them are basically like, you know, fuck our kids. You know, they're mean, evil, no good bastards. You know. So yeah, uh, and so begins the odyssey of the film, which is the film within the film, and it's called the Green Inferno. Yes, Eli Roth took his movie name from that, not vice versa or whatever. Unless he has time travel capabilities. There are people who sometimes make such claims. So and so ripped off this stuff, and it's like, well, how did they do that decades earlier? Maybe they're time travelers. Fan bros aren't too bright. You know, I've mentioned that quite a bit on this channel. They just aren't very intelligent people. They're convinced because they're into geekish pursuits that they're, you know, towering rocket scientist intellects, and they're not. They're pretty much moronic. Um, but that's a gripe for yet another day. I'm sure I'll revisit constantly in the future, at least briefly, because they're out there on the internet and they're in mass in full force talking smack about things, and basically just muddying the record about these art forms with misinformation, disinformation. Now, I don't mean, I'm not comparing all that to this current controversy over misinformation, disinformation regarding the pandemic and political matters. This has always been a beef of mine. When I started writing reviews in the 90s, I researched really hard to make all my facts perfectly accurate, all my statements correct, and share as much information as possible. You know, I had people who really appreciated it. My then best friend didn't really like it. He said I was still had inaccuracies, but I don't think he even read my work. He's one of those people who's always right. He's just right. Everyone else is wrong. The whole universe is wrong but him. Um, and you know, that was I wasn't even on the internet regularly. I didn't have internet connection at my house then. So I had to scroll through zines and magazines and newspapers and make phone calls and occasionally alight at a friend's house who had internet to write a lot of the stuff and get all these facts correct. Uh, and so, you know, the fan bros basically thrive off misinformation, disinformation. You know, they thrive on it, they disseminate it, and you know, and they also lack context or, you know, for a lot of their statements. Like I said, that's an argument for another day. But Cannibal Holocaust, back to that. So this footage, the Green Inferno, is the four characters: Alan, the head guy, the director, I guess you could say. Oh, hold on, I am going to pause this, and I'm going to run to do something very. Okay, I'm back. Probably not a smooth edit, but this is my low-tech rig here. The filmmakers are led by Alan Yates. He's kind of the, like I said, the guy who always wants to get the shot no matter what. And if there's not a shot to be gotten, he's going to go and make one. Basically, this crew begins filming in the jungle, and they have a guide named Felipe. And you know, Alan, his delivery is pretty hilarious, and he's real jolly and cynical and sarcastic. Um, and kind of ridiculously over the top. And then his girlfriend Faye, she's was an aspiring actress, and she's like the girl or whatever. Basically, she's like the girl Friday. You know, I guess they don't have those kind of things anymore. Um, Basically, she just holds things together. Nowadays, they probably call her the producer because she's actually doing the work of getting things out. Then there's Mark Tomaso. He's like a really sleazy guy. And then there's their other buddy with the blonde hair and giant mustache, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. I want to say Roger, but I might be wrong. Uh, the latter two are like camera and sound and camera, respectively. So, and Alan does a lot of the camera work himself too. But they are always shooting. They definitely keep with Alan's maximum, always shooting. And basically, they end up wasting a lot of film, which Faye points out to them several times. Uh, you know, one of the guys films Faye and Alan having sex, unknown to them, and that's kept in the footage. See, they're watching the raw footage at this network in this office and projection room, and so they're watching it. They're not going to include all that. Obviously, they're going to edit it down for TV. But the problem they're facing is that Harold Monroe is facing is that he ends up believing that all of the footage is objectionable, that their moral compass is so shattered that it'd be really in poor taste and pointless to foist their vision onto the world because it's kind of repellent. Um, However, the two network executives, one man and one woman, they're pretty excited about the whole thing, and it takes them quite a while to get dismayed by the grotesque things captured on camera by these four. And uh, eventually, the male members of the crew gang rape a native girl in the mud. Call her a monkey. It's pretty disgusting. And then the female executive is a little perturbed. She finally cracks a little. Along the way, there they film these cannibal tribes, and they also incite. There's like a feud between two tribes, and they kind of add the fuel to the fire. Literally, they like burn one village. They burn one village to the ground. Basically, they themselves burn it down, and they film it. Of course, like I said, there's a lot of real animal deaths, and some of these are perpetrated by these characters. And of course, I've read interviews with the actor who plays Alan Yates and the actress who plays Faye, and they're both incredibly disgusted by some of the things they did, that Deodato directed them to do. In one case, which is really one of the most show-stopping, grotesque scenes in the movie, they kill a giant turtle and dismember it and tear it apart, get all its flesh out, and cook it and eat it. And it's all on camera and it's all for real. And these actors are really doing this with a real turtle. It's kind of gross. And as one of the characters is filming, he turns to the one blonde guy and he sees him kind of chomping down on this meat, and the guy's got an incredibly disgusted look on his face. So even though he was probably the most cynical, mean member of the crew as a character, the actor was visibly perturbed by having to do this, and who can blame him? So this kind of carries on for a while until they wrap up the footage with Cannibal Tribe attacking the four filmmakers, and they're taking them out one by one. They start with Faye, of course. They rape her, then they kill her and eat her. All of it being filmed, and Alan's like, "Keep shooting!" And and finally, it's down to Alan and one of the other two guys. Yeah, the Mark Tomaso guy, and he's like, "Alan, we've got to get out of here. We've got to get the film to the States." And Alan's like, "Keep filming." And it's like, dude, how are you going to get to the States if you're filming yourself being killed and eaten? And that's essentially what happens, to the point where finally the camera falls on the side and it films Alan, being killed, just, axed on the head. And I mean, it's not incredibly gory, just bloody, falls down dead. And he's kind of staring lifelessly into the camera. And of course, that kind of shot has been used in tons of found footage films where the camera is left and it's just filming, what's happening. A good example I thought was the ending of Man Bites Dog, which is also in this vein. And that's one I would like to revisit. It's on the Criterion Channel, so I'm sure I'll watch it again soon. I may even watch it for the Halloween season. Who knows? It was one of the first of these kind of films I ever saw. Maybe the first when it first came out. So, the conclusion is Harold Monroe comes to is, who are the real cannibals? I wonder who are the real cannibals as he lights his pipe and the gorgeous theme music kicks in and the movie ends. And the music, this whole soundtrack is, like I said, incredible. The main theme is extremely melodic and catchy and almost poignant sounding. And they will not only put it during the beginning and end credits and some of the more pastoral scenery, but they'll put it in the middle of the extremely grotesque scenes. And as the film, marches to its climax, they intersperse it randomly with the really dark, evil music, which is just really grim and synthesizers and strings, very dark minor chords. And sometimes, like, there's one or two extended scenes where they do the music back and forth, between the pretty music and the evil music. And that just underscores things. But you got to realize that as far as music in extreme films, music with extreme images, Americans find it ironic. Probably British people do too, but a lot of Westerners find it ironic and what's the word? They think it's obviously deliberately trying to create a friction between what you see and what you hear. Whereas I've noticed in a lot of foreign films, especially Italian films, the beautiful music is in the movie no matter what's happening. I mean, to them, it's not ironic that I can tell. I've read interviews with several of these composers, and they're asked sometimes, your themes are really pretty, and they're like, yeah, I mean, there's nothing incongruous about it to them. They're not doing it to be funny and ironic, but it does achieve that effect. Not funny, but definitely ironic. But I think to them, beautiful music can fit in any kind of scene in a film. And that's an interesting take. And like I said, it's very different than the way Americans would score films, especially, really violent films. So what are my conclusions? Well, it's a masterpiece and all that. It's definitely it's my favorite of this vein of cannibal film for sure. There's several I dislike just as movies. There's several I like as movies, and then there's several that are kind of what we would call nowadays problematic, in that they're okay movies, but certain shots are too much even for me. In other words, context is everything. And also what you bring to the table. And a lot of the animal violence, at least when I used to watch this, I could detach myself from. Like I said, it gets harder each time I watch it. But there are a couple of movies that have had some animal deaths where, especially ones where the animal's eyes are open and it's looking into the camera, like looking at us as it's dying, and that kind of stuff I can't really handle. I used to have a couple of movies like that, and I sold them. I haven't sold many movies on moral grounds. They're a handful. Even one of Deodato's Cut and Run I did because some of the sexual violence was just too much, and the violence in general. It was just a little too real. I know it was human deaths and attacks, but yeah, it is a brutal, sadistic film. I think it's vastly more sadistic than Cannibal Holocaust. But anyway, if you want to see it, I think that's streaming on Prime too, or was. It's probably on Tubi. You can find just about any gory movie on Tubi. Great channel. So, yeah, one of the most frightening films ever made, Tim Lucas, Video Watchdog. So I agree. And the other one is a very different kind of cannibal movie, Cannibal Apocalypse. I've talked at length about this in the show before, too. I was so happy when it finally came out on Blu-ray. This is made by an Italian filmmaker, Antonio Margheriti, and I will probably be reviewing another one of his movies for this series. This is one of his later films, so it's more action-oriented and more gory, but it's still very well made, and also it has a cool soundtrack that has really pretty music, and then sometimes really funky music that's very, again, seemingly at odds with some of what you're seeing mood-wise. But this film is not, film crew or whoever goes to the middle of nowhere and meets these real cannibals, and there's animal deaths, and the cannibals get them and everything. This completely different kind of movie, but it follows that wave, and that was made by an Italian and has cannibals in it. But it's not really part of that particular strain of subgenre that I just talked about. But it kind of piggybacked its success off of it. So Cannibal Apocalypse, came out maybe a year or two after Cannibal Holocaust. It came out in 1980. Cannibal Holocaust is, I believe, 1978 or 1979. It's like Dawn of the Dead. I always get those two mixed up in those 2 years. Great time for gory horror movies. But Cannibal Apocalypse is about these Vietnam veterans, and I like movies with a Vietnam theme too. I'm kind of a sucker for that. They're Vietnam veterans and three buddies from the same hometown in Georgia. It's rife with coincidence. It's shot in Atlanta, Georgia, also. Though there are scenes where they double the woods of Atlanta as Vietnam. You get a few Asian actors, costumes and and some explosions and gunfire, and yeah, we've got Vietnam right here in Atlanta. So John Saxon plays Norman Hopper. He's the captain of this regiment. Like I said, two of his hometown buddies who serve underneath him, Tommy Thompson, played by Tommy King, and Tony King, sorry, and the humorously named Charlie Bukowski, played by Giovanni Lombardo Radici or John Morgan, who did several of these really gory movies and really kind of hates them. He got pigeonholed, and it kind of made him famous and infamous, but kind of ruined his serious acting career. And he's still bitter about it, but I get it. There's some great extras on this Blu-ray where they interview all these guys that are living. I mean, Tony King is deceased, but they interview Saxon and Radici, and it's fascinating. Both of them had a lot of problems with this movie, and with, of course, that genre we were just talking about, no doubt. Saxon just thought it was a bit too much to show his character engaging in explicit cannibalism, albeit simulated. But that's kind of what it was. Now, so they kind of did his little bit tastefully, because basically cannibalism is posited as a virus, and they obtained it in Vietnam. Somehow, Tommy and Charlie are trapped in this pit by these Vietnamese, and they had to resort to eating flesh, and they get a taste for it, and then Tommy bites Norman, and it's transmitted. But it takes several years before it reawakens. It awakens in Norman at all, or reawakens in the other two. They're basically in a mental hospital. They're so fucked up by all these experiences. And Charlie gets out, probably prematurely, and he goes on this weird, I don't want to call it a rampage, but, kind of a shooting spree from the mall. He's using a sniper rifle, and the Georgia cops, some of them were played by real Georgian actors, and their stuff was filmed with direct sound. Some of this is filmed with direct sound, and some of it dubbed. Like Radici stuff is dubbed, his voice and things, and Elizabeth Turner, who plays Norman's wife. They're European actors whose dialogue is looped into English, but Tony King's and John Saxon and the head of the police department, who is a Southerner. They all had a live sound. So that was interesting because almost every movie out of Italy during that era was completely dubbed, even when the actors, spoke their own language on screen, and even when they dubbed their own voice over it or under it. But in this case, they were recorded live, and then they dubbed over certain actors' performances. So yeah, Charlie starts shooting, and he's holed up in the mall, and Norman comes, and it's kind of humorous, and Norman comes and talks him down, and he goes back to the mental hospital. Meanwhile, Norman has started having these cravings, and he bites the neighbor's daughter, who is like this kind of very precocious teenager who's trying to seduce him kind of clumsily, and only succeeds in getting bitten, and she kind of likes it, but it's not exactly the bite she was hoping for. But that starts stirring his needs or desires, and he's trying to reason with his wife. I mean, and explain this stuff to her, but she just won't have it. And in the mental hospital, Tommy and Charlie, they get free. Norman comes to them, and he rendezvous with them because basically I think he feels he runs out of options. His wife won't believe him. No one relates to him. He can't explain this to the police that he's feeling like doing the same kind of acts as these other guys, though they're not known for being cannibals yet. I mean, Charlie obviously is a killer when he got out of the institution, but basically they're still just soldiers who have PTSD, which it wasn't called that back then. No one really publicly knows they're cannibals, but Norman relates to these guys on a weird level of all going through the horror of Vietnam together and all suffering from the cannibalistic urges. And so they pick up one of the female doctors from the hospital, and the four of them go on kind of an adventure. Before they go, they they buzzsaw the legs of characters, and Raducci says in the interview, they're taking the cannibal picnic with them. So yeah, they're putting them in these bags so they'll have something to eat on the run. And they end up in the sewers of Atlanta. The police chase them. Lots of action, lots of funky music, lots of gory deaths, and not all cannibal oriented. I mean, Charlie's death is extremely memorable and maybe anatomically impossible, but really impressive as a gore set piece. And unfortunately, it just ends up with Norman, and he goes back home to his wife, and he's puts on his uniform, and he's going to commit suicide. And she's like, basically, like, take me with you. And that's kind of the end. But as the police come to check out the shots, the neighbor's daughter and her little brother apparently have begun eating their not too friendly mother and storing some of her for a picnic in their refrigerator. And that's kind of how it ends. So the plague is going to go on. It's kind of like Rabid, Cronenberg's Rabid. It's going to spread across Atlanta. But there wasn't a part two, and that's good because really it's more about these characters. Saxon does an incredible job. He plays it straight, but he has some sly humor too. I mean, this movie's really got a little something for everyone, as they say. It's I don't know, I love it. It's eminently rewatchable. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this up. I just want to say real quick though. Something I haven't mentioned in a couple of videos that I like to try to mention in every video, and I always have it in the description below. I would plead with you to put a like on this video if you like it, or even if you're indifferent to it, just give me the benefit of the doubt. Now, if you hate it, be true to yourself. If you don't mind sharing it, that would be cool. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I share all my videos on both of those formats, platforms. And you can leave comments if you want, and please subscribe. I haven't, it's been several videos since I have affixed the links, little icons with the links, gives you, you can just click on it and subscribe in the last few seconds of my videos. I need to catch up on that. I was good about it for quite a while, but now I really need to go back and add those. So, like when I'd be talking right now, there'd be a subscribe button here, and you could just press it. So I need to get on with that. So but subscribe. I would be grateful. And that's about it. I'm going to talk about uh, two or three more Halloween season appropriate films in the next video, um, and basically, do as many as I can. Work is going to kind of disrupt me on like the 27th, 28th, and 29th. So I'm not sure how much I'll be able to film on those days. So I'm basically trying to cram as much as possible here. And then, when the weekend comes and we get up to the 30th, 31st, November 1st and 2nd, the holiday ends, then I'll be able to shoot the last few. But I don't want to have a whole bunch at the end to try to move through and rush. So while I had some time today, I thought I would, double up on it. This is my second one today, and I may do another one. And I'll try to stagger their releases. But since I ended up not posting one for like 3 days at all, and I've been posting them every day, I will post this one. I'll post it after midnight, so it'll be, I guess, maybe I'll post it before midnight. It doesn't matter if it's the same date, but essentially, I just want to keep the content coming. That's something about this channel that I'm not very good at, which I used to be, but back when I was good at it, the frequency of my posting, my presentation wasn't as confident or well done. And so, I'm trying to kind of incorporate all these things, keep getting better, keep going forward, don't look back. I'm not going to start like a whole new video series like I did with the music stuff. It's always going to be BLU review and, however the format. I won't be doing any VHS. It'll all be digital, but, where there's streaming DVD or Blu-ray. So thanks for everything, and I will see you guys soon, and have a happy holiday